I have not sat down with my 12-year-old yet and drawn a picture. But, I feel like I will at some point do that. I actually will. In our home and how my husband and I are choosing to raise our kids, this is not how I was raised, by the way. I'm just making a conscious choice that nothing is off the table. Like, I want my kids to always come to me, and I don't ever want to gasp and make like this big deal, like, oh my goodness, can't believe you're asking this question. I heard somebody say one time that whoever you hear it from first, whether that be sex or any other topic, they're the expert. And I really do feel like that is true. I remember, my childhood when I first learned about sex and all these different things. I did not learn it from my parents. That was kind of something that, you know, that I guess I just learned was shameful and, secretive. And I don't want that to be with my children. This is the thing. There have been it's been a combination of a couple different things that have kind of come together and taught my son about sex. And actually, we're not all the way there yet, but I do think that I am entering the phase where I might start drawing a picture. But I just want to explain to you the different things. Okay, I'm sitting by the chickens. They're so cute. Chickens was one thing. If you live on a farm and you have any type of hobby farm, that is a very good outlet to use. And never like, my husband and I, we've never laughed and made it like a crude joke or anything like that, but like the rooster and the hens. And honestly, that has been very helpful. And I'm not just talking sex here. I'm talking, reproducing, how to have families, like, how we've talked about how chickens just lay eggs, right? But they won't become a baby unless there's a rooster. We don't have roosters. We live here in town. We did have them at one time, but then the hens weren't laying, so I don't know if they were being mean to them. But we did have two, so I've heard that you also shouldn't have two. We didn't know, whatever, but we don't have roosters anymore. But that is one way that you can begin incorporating that. Like, don't ever make anything taboo, and don't ever like just let it be like a normal part of life. Like, they reproduce. Chickens lay eggs, but like if you have cows or cattle, any other type of animal, I mean, well, you're going to be exposed, your kids are going to be exposed to this reproducing, right? And so that's a good outlet. Another thing, I'm sitting in the middle of the garden. Now, I know the garden, you wouldn't be like, oh, how can you use that? But I talk about it every single year when we're planting the garden. And we talk about how that's so crazy how a plant can come from a little seed. And then I use that as an opportunity, talking to my 4-year-old or my 10-year-old, 11, my 12-year-old, and all ages, right? That I have. I have almost 7-year-old. They're all different ages. And I say, you were a seed. Before you were born, you were a seed in mommy's tummy. I mean, using everything around you. You could use the apple trees, how, the bees, how the trees reproduce and make fruit. So, my son is 12. We haven't actually had like the talk yet. I think maybe my husband has, but I am very open with my son, and he comes to me a lot. He's been going through puberty, and there's transitions and things like that. And I've come alongside him in that way. But when I get my period, for example, like I've talked about it with him, or just like in passing or whatever. And, this last time I had my period, he asked some more questions about it, because, we don't want our kids to be like, oh, or like my girls, I don't want them to think it's scary. Like, I've talked to them too, like, you're going to have a period, and this is what happens. And they see me and my stuff once in a while. And, but with Elijah, I was explaining to him that, just like the chickens have eggs, women have eggs too, and it's a beautiful thing. And every month there's an egg there, but if it doesn't get fertilized, like by how the rooster fertilizes an egg, if it doesn't get fertilized, then, there's this blood that happens and washes it away. And so I think the next step that I will probably go to is I will probably draw a picture of like a woman's ovaries and like the egg and stuff like that so that he can better understand what's going on with that. But this is biology, right? Like if you're a public school kid like me, you guys had the talk and the girls and the boys, and who even knows what it's like now. It's really scary, but I don't be scared of these topics with your kids. Just make them like a normal conversation. And remember that piece of advice: whoever talks to your children first will become the expert. Think about your life. I'm sure that's true for you too. But I don't ever want my kids to be embarrassed to come and talk to me. And my son has come and talked to me about, some transitional issues, and I try to not laugh. Like I try to keep it serious, and I get my husband involved. I mean, when it's appropriate, but I'm the one who's home more. And so like this is my job, right? Um, for the most part. I'm not saying that dad's not involved, but I think the biggest thing is to not like make this a goofy thing or shame our children. The same thing with like, if masturbation issues start coming up in your home, like I have explained that this is a gift that God created for marriage, but you're not married yet. This is a gift, but we keep it closed until marriage. We don't open this gift yet. And, and get the Bible involved. And, I know I have brought up Paul so many times about how, Paul says it is better to not get married. But if you burn with passion, it is good to get married. And so like just explaining that like this is how God has designed us. There's passions and things, but we need to bring it under the submission and authority of Christ, and it needs to be in the right way. So here in my home, we have used the garden. We have used the chickens. I will definitely draw a picture. And then you know what? We're gonna piece this together. I've never done this before, right? Like if you're getting to this place in your homeschool, and you're getting kids who are transitioning into teenagers, my daughters don't have their periods yet or anything like that, but it's like we've never done this before. I wasn't raised this way, but I know what would have been helpful, and I I'm a public school kid, like I said, and I know that how I'm doing it is way different than how I experienced it. But you know what? God is over it all, and he will lead us. He will show us how to do this in a godly way. If you have any questions, comments, anything you want to share, if you want to connect, please comment down below. I would just love to connect with you. Until next time, bye for now.